Okay, we'll please raise up for the Institute anthem.
Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityormamritam gamaya Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityormamritam gamaya asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityormamritam gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
An introductory remarks, which is the audio presentation.
Good evening, friends. This is Shankar Panikar again. This time we have the fifth professional development talk on the Saturday evenings. But today is not a Saturday, today is a Friday. So be it as it may. Anyway, learning can come at any time, any way, any form. So professional development series will go on. Today we have Sri Shyam Shekhar, who's the chief ideator in the I Thought Advisory. And today's topic is very, very interesting, stock market and avenues. All of us know stock markets, but hardly we know anything in depth of that. You cannot predict in stock market. We have been hearing Mr. Adani getting richer by 1,600 crores every day. So I don't know how this entire numbers work. Anyway, may God bless him. When it comes to stock market, all of us are very jittery. See, we don't know what is happening, and it is just a function of demand and supply. But then one thing I can tell you, friends, from my experience, let us not put all the eggs in one basket, and let us not be greedy. Let us have a clear objective, investment objective, and let us, if when it gets met, you please exit or book some profits. As simple as that. Yeah. So yes, if you I'm yet to see. In fact I was a banker before. So according to me, when your investment objective is correct, when you follow the basic principles, and when you have patience to see the up and down or peak and trough, I don't think anybody has burned their fingers. So that is the number one view which I think no view which I have. The second one is, when it comes to stock markets and other things, there are a lot of diploma courses offered by, I think it is NSC. So therefore, I strongly recommend you to go through that. In fact, in HDFC Bank again, we were supposed to pass certain examination, be it DP or capital markets. Actually, it gives us a little bit more confidence when it comes to explaining the product to a prospective customer. So I used to aggressively get those qualifications. So actually that has given us a little bit more confidence. So therefore, it is going to be a lovely learning session. And don't hesitate to take exposure to the stock market. Just because it is very risky, you cannot stay away from that totally. So a little bit of risk is actually good, and of course we need to take an informed decision. So good luck to all of you, and thank you, Sri Sham Shekhar, for coming down. I'm sorry I could not meet you in person, but then we'll definitely meet very soon. Thank you so much, and thank you, Rajesh Iyer, sir. As usual, I need not tell you, thanks in person, because there should not be. All of us are doing our duty. Thank you, friends, for being with us. Keep on supporting us. Thank you. Onwards and upwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Shankar sir. I request sir to come and give a shawl to the speaker. About Shyam Shekhar, he has got a very wide experience in the stock market. He heads a company called I Thought. He is not a share broker, or he is neither a BSc, neither an NSE broker. They analyze companies on their own. They have a different clientele. And he has been in this trade for over 3 decades, about over 3 decades in this industry. He is a big writer. He has his own investment biography. He has built a big research team in Chennai, having his own offices in Thainampet. And he's an author and he's a regular speaker. You can even see him in a lot of TV debates on the stock market. Suddenly, if the index goes up, all the channels will be approaching him to ask him views on the market. So this is about our speaker. Now I request sir to come and give a shawl to Marimutha. Venkatraman sir to come and give a memento to the speaker.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to speak to you on this very interesting topic. Firstly, my apologies that we couldn't start on time. Usually I start all my programs on time, but this time for some factors beyond our control, we couldn't make it here. Coming to the subject, most Indians have a very suspicious view of investing in stocks. The reason has to do with how our country has dealt with governance at multiple levels. Stock market basically is a mirror of society. If a society has high level of integrity and if it believes in doing everything correctly, if everybody pays their taxes while they buy their products, that will be reflected in the stock market. If we think that we can make exceptions to ourselves, such aspects will also be seen in how society deals with our capital. Integrity is something which is very, very integral to wealth creation. I don't know how many of you have registered a house property. It's impossible for us to register a house property and get a document out of a government office without, doing the usual stuff. Despite the fact that you pay all the taxes, you are an honest citizen, you still don't get value out of what you do. There was a time when the same thing was applicable to the stock market also. We had the Harshad Mehta scam in 1992. We had the UTI crisis. I refuse to use the word scam just for nicety. In 2000, and we have evolved a lot as a country. Our evolution is such that today a significant part of your employment provident fund contribution is invested in stocks. This was unthinkable 2 decades ago. So today, if you have a PF contribution, 15 to 20%, 15 now, but it will keep going up in future, will go towards investing in stock market. So every Indian has to know where his money is going, and it is in that sense that this talk is relevant to you, and I have tried to tell you where the country is going, where the economy is going, and where your money is going, so that you have some idea of this subject. It is important to know where to invest money, because most Indians who do well in careers fail to do that, and as a result of that, though they earn a lot of money, they don't create enough wealth. Your salaries are high, but people don't create enough wealth, whereas you see the business communities are able to do much better despite not having high salaries, because the money that they deploy is growing faster and longer. Effectively, this option should be available to all of us, and it is actually available to all of us, but most of us tend to miss out on it because we don't use it adequately. India is one of the few countries in the world which has reasonable growth for decades. When I say decades, you will have 5 to 7% economic growth for 30, 40 years. We already had 30 years of such growth, except 1 or 2 years now during COVID. Our growth record is very, very consistent. It's between 5 and 7%. I'm not even taking the high growth rates into consideration. The floor is 5 and the average is around 7. If an economy grows at 7%, the kind of wealth it can create for people is enormous. If you look at the valuations of India's top companies today and see where they were 20 years ago, you will understand that economic growth has helped these companies attain this value, and the good news is that such economic growth is going to continue for at least a few more decades. If you are one of those who are studying, let's say CMA or CA today, it's quite certain that right through your career, you're going to see very, very high economic growth. What does this mean? It means that once you finish your studies, if you understand how to use investing as a wealth creator for yourself, then you have a very, very unique opportunity to turn your savings into significant wealth over 3 or 4 decades. All these transformations don't happen in 1 or 2 years. It takes time. So you need to believe in something long enough, and you must sustain for decades if you want to become very, very rich. There are no shortcuts in this, and there is a requirement for you to understand this, because a part of your savings is going to compulsorily be invested in equity over the next 3 or 4 decades. So let's see how the corporate India has been doing over the last 10 years. This is the corporate sales growth of the NSE 500. These are the top 500 companies listed on the National Stock Exchange. To give you an idea of how many companies are materially important in the National Stock Exchange, about 900. This covers more than half of that, and these 500 companies had a net sale of 44 lakh crores in the year 2012. Whereas in the year 2022, the year that is just completed, it is estimated that their sales has risen to 107 lakh crore. You can be certain that over the next 10 years, this 107 lakh crore will be a much, much larger sum of money. Now, why is this sales so relevant? I mentioned to you that the economy grows between 5 and 7%. Here, these companies are grown at a CAGR of 9%. So, every year, companies grow at the rate of 9% in sales, and profit will proportionately grow over and above that. You're all cost management professionals, so you will understand that when sales increases at 9%, the profit doesn't just increase by 9%, it has a probability of increasing at a slightly higher rate. This would mean that profit compounds faster than sales. So if sales is going to compound at 9%, then profit will probably compound somewhere between 12 or 15%. Effectively, what that would mean is that valuations will grow at double digit for companies. So some years it may grow much higher, and some years it may grow much lower, but the average growth in valuations of businesses cannot be lower than the growth in profits. So if your profit grows between 12 and 15%, your valuation will also grow between 12 and 15%. What does this mean? It means that you have an opportunity to make that same amount as returns in your portfolio, provided you are diligent in how you deploy your money. That's all there is to this. Okay, I can actually say that this slide is one presentation, but there's a lot more to it. But the simple thing is that sales is growing, and that means that profits are growing faster than sales, and that means that valuation will certainly grow. When you have a certainty of outcome, then it makes the case for you to invest in equities much, much stronger. Now, many of you will immediately think of what happened during COVID. I'll briefly explain that to you. If you see, in the FY19, 83.7 lakh crore was the sales of the NSE 500. In the next year, in FY20, it fell only to 85.32, whereas many of us would feel that it will be much higher. The reason is that many economic engines of our country, like information technology, pharmaceuticals, many of these did not actually pause during COVID, whereas some other industries were very heavily affected. So those engines of the economy which did well actually compensated for the other engines, and so the damage due to COVID in the NSE 500 sales was very, very marginal. But it persisted for 2 years. So if you see FY21, we still had the same impact. We were not able to really crank up sales subsequently, but we have made up, and last year has been a very robust year in revenues. The message this gives you is that if the next 10 years economy grows at 7%, we will have sales more or less at the same rate, growing at 9-10%, which means that if the stock market falls in sympathy to global factors like it's doing just today, then you would actually have a very interesting opportunity to participate in that opportunity, because India is growing at 9%, whereas developed countries are not growing at 9%. So as we are growing at a higher rate, if our stock markets fall in sympathy to the Western markets, that would mean that we would get an opportunity to buy into Indian businesses at valuations way cheaper than what they are today. So corporate sales is shining bright, and that's the first good news. The next good news is about the companies. Let's understand how the Nifty is constructed and how the various Nifty indices are having weightages. I have put the top 10 companies in the NSE 50. They are also the top 10 companies right up to the NSE 500. What happens between NSE 50 and NSE 500 is, in NSE 50 it's a concentrated index of 50 companies, NSE 500 has 500 companies. When you increase the number of companies, then the weightages gradually reduce, right? If you have 50, then the concentration of the top 10 companies, each of them will be higher. You see 58%. But when you have 500, they fall to 39. Effectively, 450 companies in the NSE 500 contribute to 61% of the weightage by value in the NSE 500. Now, when the economy grows faster, what happens is the other companies, which is the 450 companies, also start growing at a faster rate. Whereas when the economy does a slower growth rate like we are seeing in recent years, the top 50 companies tend to have a advantage because they are large and they have much more resilience and they are able to perform much better. Effectively, what this indicates is that 10 companies constitute 58% of the Nifty, and in this, almost all the companies have seen a remarkable resilience. Even the ones with problems like ICICI Bank and Axis Bank have been cleaned up. So, never have we seen an index have such a high concentration of relatively clean books of accounts which offer us good growth in the future. So, this slide tells you how the composition of various indices are and how top 10 companies dominate these indices. The NSE 50 top 10 companies have 58%, in NSE 100 it is half, 50%, in NSE 200 it is 43%, and NSE 500 it is 39%. So, the large companies dominate the stock markets in India, and that is what this slide tells you. Now, let us see how much of money of promoters is invested. See, in India, we have this perception which is built that all Indian promoters are running on bank funds and they tend to not use that funds objectively. While world over, bankruptcy is the order of the day, businesses tend to fail. How much of this is willful is what we should actually question, right? So, it is not just with the money of banks that you can run a business. It is mandatory for promoters to be adequately invested in business. All of you know what is the debt equity ratio which a bank will consider. Beyond a certain debt equity ratio, they are not going to give you money. So, if you see how much of money of shareholders is in our economy, 74 lakh crores is how much money we, all of us shareholders, have put as equity in our companies. Effectively, the business owners of this country are telling society, my stakes on India are pretty high, what about yours? And that is why many of us are also investing some part of our savings in equity, so that we also participate in the development of the country. Many people think that, oh, equity is not for me, I am going to only keep my money in a bank FD. Effectively, you are taking the same risk. To think that bank FD is less risky than equity is wrong, because your FD is guaranteed to the extent of only 5%. 5 lakhs, sorry. You have the deposit guarantee which only gives you 5 lakhs. So, the bank is also taking the same economic risks on business, on the economy. It is lending to so many of us to buy our two-wheelers. It is giving us money to educate our children, right? It is giving so many loans. It gives us loans to buy two-wheelers, it gives us loans to buy mobile phones, the bank gives you personal loans without asking where you are going to invest it. So, the banking system is as much taking risks on your money, which is lying there as a deposit or just in the current account or savings account. Effectively, you are not getting anything extra for the risk that the bank is taking. That risk is getting a reward, which in turn goes to the shareholders of the bank. So, if you want to benefit from ICICI Bank or Axis Bank or HDFC Bank growing at this rate, or even SBI for that matter, when they do well, you will benefit only if you are a equity investor in that venture and not if you are depositor. As a depositor, you will only get your money back and you will get the returns. But as an equity investor, you have a variable component of returns which you will get. The good news is 74 lakh crores is the owner's equity, which is all of us. If you own shares, it includes your equity also in the Indian system, and this is only the NSE 500, just those 500 companies. Which brings us to what should be the return. If I put my money in my bank in a deposit, I get 5.5% or 6%. I am assured of that. I am very, very comfortable with that. Now, you are telling me to invest my money in the Nifty, because that is being done as part of my PF money, right? Everyone is investing in probably EPFO. EPFO is investing 10%, it's going up to 15% soon. So, if you look at the returns from the Nifty, this is a chart which we have created in our company, which we call as a Hawkeye view. It tells you how much the Nifty has given. You can see the last one, which is 31 years. Over 30, if you have invested in 92 and you have done nothing, over 31 years you got a return of 12%. And then as it comes, you will see every year it will come down from 11, 10, then 10 for another year, then 12. So, as the duration changes, this number keeps changing. But the good news is that you've always made double-digit returns. Not many people who are investors actually know that this economy in the last 30 years has given equity returns in double-digit consistently almost for everybody if you are just invested in the indices, right? Which is a very, very high ask, okay? It's because we had such a low base and we have had sustained economic growth for these decades, we have been managing to get this. In between, you'll see the fluctuation in the last 2-3 years, but these are not sustainable. I can assure you that the returns will again go back between 10 and 13-14%. That's all you can make in the long run. If you see those returns, you will see that, and that's why we created this chart. Long-term consistency always trumps short-term intensity. We need a person like Bruce Lee to tell us that. So, why India, why now? Now, I am going to talk to you about our country after COVID and what has happened to our country, whether we are in a better place or we are in a worse place. What do you think? I want somebody in the back to tell, are we better off or are we worse off after COVID? Better off. Somebody, some students in the end, what's your opinion? You have more time or less time? Anyway, so what has happened during COVID is that the country came to a standstill. Economic activity in many parts of the economy were paused, but a lot of things happened during this as a response to COVID. And that response in turn has made us economically more nimble, more resilient, and more adaptive. This contrasts to the developed countries like US. How many of you know that today India can send money to all citizens if it wants? How many of you know? India, the government can send money to all of us if it wants. How many of you know? Our system is ready. We don't, right? So, because we have a system to do it, India sends money to all its farmers digitally. How many of you know this? All farmers. And India knows what every farmer is growing real time. How many of you know this? So Delhi was so distant from India and more distant from Bharat, but over the last decade or so, we are much closer and much more integrated as a country. So here it is. This is the 20-year CAGR, annual compounded annual growth rate in GDP. The GDP of our country in 2001-2 was 38 lakh crore and it is 236 lakh crore now in 2021-22. Now just imagine in 31-32 what this GDP will be. Now, why is GDP relevant? The GDP is what all of us produce as a society. It includes what every Indian produces. It could be a housewife who cooks, it could be a dhobi, it could be a person who drops people as an auto rickshaw driver, it could be somebody who is producing cars, it could be somebody producing computers, it could be somebody producing very expensive medical equipment, it could be somebody producing an Apple 14 iPhone. All these things will come under your GDP. So GDP is what we all together as a country, irrespective of region, caste, religion, all these things, language, put together, how much are we producing as a country? That one number is basically the GDP. India's GDP from here can grow at the same rate. You can see this in the next 20 years, we will see a double digit number. This 2 lakh crore can become much, much bigger in double digit. What is this got to do with stock market? Basically, when your GDP grows, the value of your businesses grows in alignment. It's as simple as that. The value of all your businesses grows in alignment. Countries like Japan, very, very modern societies, don't have growth. So they are rich, aging society which don't have people to produce and grow their society. Now that's a very peculiar problem. You're rich, you have all the resources, you have money, but you don't have the people to produce for your future and for your growth. So effectively what happens to such societies is that gradually the society goes in decline, which is where India as a country which will become the world's largest population probably in a decade or so, will end up having higher growth rate than all other countries in the world. So what that means is that we'll produce more than everybody else. When you produce more, you have enough food, you have enough of almost everything. For a society where people used to wait for 10 years to get a two-wheeler and a car, where there was a waiting list on everything, you will suddenly have a society where everybody gets everything on tap. Today you see that a power connection, a water connection, a gas connection, a phone connection, all these things you had to wait. I remember paying 25,000 rupees to BSNL to get a land phone on what was called as a Takkal scheme. I'm sure many of the elders in this room will know what I'm talking about. Whereas you just go, you give your Aadhaar number, and then without even asking you any question, that guy in the shop gives you one SIM card, right? It's as simple as that, right? Now this transformation has happened over 20-25 years. It's a reasonably short duration. I'm sure we could have done better, but in a democracy, there are other factors which slow our growth down. So what is happening now is that we are having verdicts which are singular verdicts. Earlier in the 90s, sometime between 1996 and 2014, we had fractured democratic verdicts. What these fractured democratic verdicts meant was consensus on policy had to be created amongst more people. So somebody could be a finance minister, but he would have to ask an alliance partner whether some policy was acceptable to him. And he had to ask many people these things. So decision making actually had to take much longer. What this means is that reform actually happened in fits and starts. It went one distance, then paused, then another distance, then paused. But the good news is that a lot of groundwork was done between 2009 and 2013, but nothing progressed. Okay. Subsequent to 2014, all these things which were waiting, okay, most of the things that you see happening in the first regime of the NDA, which is 2014-2019, were actually conceptualized in the previous government, right? But understand one thing, that's actually fast. There are what was conceptualized in 1999-2004 also, which never got implemented in the next 9 or 10 years because we had fractured political mandates. Now, when you have one party enjoying majority, they cannot give those excuses. They have to take policy decisions which have to deliver growth to society, because society will not take excuses. So that basically should translate, in my opinion, into faster GDP growth and more inclusive and a broad-based GDP growth. So I think that the facilities which Indians get, the amenities, the opportunities, the financialization, everybody must have access to loans which are reasonably priced. I'm sure all of you hear the stories of people giving up their life because they could not pay interest to somebody, right? Because the interest is so high that literally interest rates are killing. How many of you have read these stories in the newspapers? They still happen to this day. So effectively what this means is that in a society like ours, which is developing at a reasonably good rate of 9-10%, access to credit is not happening to people who really need the credit. Somebody who has a lot of money doesn't need more money as a loan, whereas somebody who has no money needs loans to build his life. It is basically that loan which becomes his capital. For example, let's say that there is a family which sends a first generation person to a medical college and they take a loan, right? Now, if this loan is at a reasonable interest rate, then the ability of that person to pay it back is good. They will be able to pay it back. Assume this family has to go to a money lender, some informal system, and borrow the same money, then the interest rate will be in the region of 17, 18, 24, right? Effectively, what this means is that though that family has an achiever who has reached the correct level of education where he has proved himself to be worthy of opportunity, still that family is not able to break the economic shackles because it takes much longer to repay an interest rate of 18% than it takes to repay a loan with an interest rate of 7-8%. So, the country has to financialize every person. Okay, it does not mean just giving loans to everybody, but understanding how people manage money. And that is why financial reform has been so critical to our evolution in the last several years. And this is where I am going to start. First, there was a situation where we had half the Indians who had never gone into a bank. They have never entered a bank. We have stories where people say that if I go to a bank, they won't allow me inside. I have no respect. I have no dignity. I will not be allowed inside. There have been all these stories. But we have today nearly 90 crore Indians who are having Jan Dhan accounts. Okay, huge amounts of money are lying in those bank accounts, right? We hear these stories. So much money is lying in the bank account. Okay, then suddenly somebody will say, oh, bank will charge you and they will take away all your money. So all these fear psychosis happens. But the Jan Dhan account it's a basic account. Nobody can take any minimum balance or anything like that. But what that account does is that the government sends money through that account only to people, to ordinary people. And what it has shown is how those people handle the money. Now assume that I have got some 10,000 every year and I have not always maintained a balance of 5,000, then I become eligible for credit. If I maintain the balance of 25,000, then I become even more eligible for credit. If I maintain a balance of 1 lakh, then people know that I can be given a loan of at least 50,000 to 1 lakh, right? Or even 3 lakhs. Your expenditure, your spending pattern, the way you're keeping money, the way you're handling money gets a track record. Whereas if you're going to even earn good money in cash, spend good money in cash, you are never going to be given a bank loan, right? But there are a lot of people who have this account who still felt that, oh, I am selling fruits every day. I'm doing laundry work. I'm doing what you call as ironing clothes, right? Some job like that. I'm making money. I'm sending my daughter to college, but I have no time to go and put that money in a bank. I get my money, I pay who all I have to pay, I have cash. My wife keeps it somewhere in my house, locked inside some bureau. That guy may even have jewelry worth a lakh or two, but no one will know. That is where you have to create traceability of income of people, right? Somebody could be an auto driver. There are so many guys in Chennai who are driving Ola or Uber auto, I don't know, Uber has got, I don't know whether Ola has got, who tell you that I won't come unless you pay cash. You have that, right? Every day, even today. Such is the level of ignorance of these guys that they can get that money in UPI immediately. Okay? If the money travels via UPI, he creates income history which makes him financially more included, right? So this whole concept was first give them a bank account, then create UPI in which there are no charges and digitize the lives of people. When Digital India as an idea was put forward, there was a lot of derision and mockery in our society that, oh, how will this person do this? We had a person who has held an office no less than that of a finance minister actually saying that, because he had created all this architecture, but politics is such that the moment you reverse roles, you start questioning whether it will happen. But today, every single person who has a UPI account is able to transact very easily. I may have somebody in my village who suddenly needs 500 rupees to take his mother to a doctor. Now, I am in Chennai. He calls me, firstly, he is able to call me. Okay, that itself is an access. Otherwise, he has to go to some booth and stand and all that. He just says, and he doesn't even call me on the phone. He gives a voice note in WhatsApp which says, Anna, I have to take my mother to the doctor. I need 500. You please give me this today. And you collect it when you pay my wages next, whether week or month. And what I do is, I see the voice note, I pick up my phone, I take my UPI, I pay him 500. All this takes 5 minutes. Earlier, I will spend 1000 rupees to go there and give him 500 rupees. Now this, because you'll take a car, you'll go all the way, right? Now all that is not necessary. What this digitization means is not just including people, it brings enormous efficiency to financial transaction. Now suppose you are giving a service to somebody. That person says, na urla illappa, na vandu kudukren. Okay, he says, I am traveling and I'll come back and give you the money. You can say, I'll give you my whatever, UPI account, or I know people use GPay as a, or Phone Pay or whatever, Paytm as a proxy, but actually the UPI account is the real account. All these are brands which are layering over that. So understand that UPI is the architecture, and UPI basically helps that person collect his money immediately. So there is no credit outstanding. Okay, what happens is that, suppose you are taking a lot of service, the poor and the unorganized people have been giving credit to the rich. Today, because of financial inclusion and digitization, they have a right to ask for their money immediately, and nobody can give them an excuse for a service that has already been provided. So effectively what happens is, he is able to show what income he has got. Second, he is also able to show what he is doing with that money. So he is showing a financial track record. Third, he provides data to create credit history. And fourth, he is also given a card which is not a chargeable credit card called RuPay, which shows his spending behavior. So you will know where he spends the money. And using all this, you can create credit worthiness to people. I am sure the system is already ready. It has to start getting used. And all this has happened at the hands of government. That's the beauty. How many of you know who created UPI? Anyone knows who created UPI? NPCI is the name of the company. Who is the individual who led this UPI initiative? Universal Payment Interface is UPI. RBI is the authority, but there was an individual who led this company. Nandan Nilekani. Nandan Nilekani is a former chairman of Infosys. So he led UPI. So we used people from the private sector, borrowed them, and ensured that we did something which reaches the grassroots person. Now Nandan Nilekani, interestingly, was a Congress candidate in the 2014 general election. How many of you know this? In Bangalore, he lost that election to Anant Kumar, who subsequently passed away. So as a country, we were able to get over these narrow divisions to create something which, in my opinion, is the most significant reform in the history of modern India, which is giving everybody financial access and digitization. And it broke all shackles, because India is divided on multiple lines. You have class, you have religion, you have caste, you have region, you have language, you have all these things. But when it comes to money, it has created an architecture which puts everybody on one platform. Everybody is equal on that platform, all right? Somebody who has crores of rupees also is on that platform. Somebody who earns 100 rupees every day is also on that platform. And both of them have an opportunity to prove their financial worthiness and integrity. And it is an obligatory thing. So financial digitization is going to be one of the biggest economic drivers of modern India and the India of the 21st century. Now that comes to the next point, which is urban consumption. This is one area which we have completely underestimated. It's not just urban consumption, it's consumption, but urban India has more people, so I use the word urban consumption. I think that societies are earning much more today than they earned even before COVID. Do you feel that or not? Families are actually doing much better. Urban families are doing much better now than before COVID. And even those families who have been affected a little bit by COVID are going to do better. So what this means is that consumption is going to rise. I know a lot of people ideologically feel that no, what consumption, what are you talking? I'll ask you some fundamental questions which will basically make you understand what I am trying to tell you. If I make this statement that the average price of the phone that you are buying has increased by at least 3x in the last 5 years, how many of you agree? Is that a statement you will agree? It has increased by at least 3x. People used to buy 8,000 phone, now no phone people buy is less than 20,000-25,000. Correct? Young people. The average value of your two-wheeler which you buy has gone up by double in the last 5 years. How many of you agree? The number of houses which have a refrigerator, a washing machine and a flat screen has increased all three has increased exponentially in the last 10 years. How many of you agree? Now this number will increase even more exponentially in this decade. That's the point I'm trying to make. If you go out of the urban limit of Chennai, not all houses will have a washing machine. TV they may have, washing machine they won't have. The number of electrical and electronic goods which will reach the average citizen in India will be high only next to China. It will be more than America in absolute numbers, which means that urban consumption is going up. How many of you buy movies on a phone now? In this audience, how many of you watch a movie paying in a phone? Some. 2-3 years later, you will find that all of you are doing your entertainment on your phone. Earlier, you will say that I don't have time and I am not able to go here, therefore I am not spending this money. But you will spend that money. So the consumption of this country will increase. How many of you get at least 5 deliveries from whatever, Flipkart, Amazon in a month? At least 5. This number will increase exponentially in the next few years. So urban consumption is going up. The next point is infrastructure. I had spoken about the financial digitization as a driver of the economy. It's also part of the infrastructure, but the real infrastructure I am going to talk to you about is the road infrastructure. There are 2 parts to road infrastructure. One is the Gram Sadak, which just means rural roads, village roads, right? So from 1999 till today, India has been putting up village roads without break, no matter who ruled. Every year we have put out village roads under a scheme called the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. There is no individual leader's name. It's just the Prime Minister's rural road scheme. Now this is such an important idea because connectivity creates mobility, commerce and inclusion. Earlier people were afraid to send their children even 5 kilometers for something. This more so with the girl child. If you see the number of people who go from villages to colleges today, and you compare this number with what it was 10 or 20 years ago, you will be shocked. In fact, even those who are anti-reform, and there are plenty of people in Tamil Nadu who are anti-reform, claim that we have more girls in Tamil Nadu who have studied up to whatever, college or postgraduate or whatever. What is not told, or which needs to be told, is that it is because of the infrastructure investments that have happened in Tamil Nadu. And this infrastructure investments are now happening everywhere. It's not just Tamil Nadu, right? So what this would mean, infrastructure is now a driver of development, it is also a driver of reduction in inequity between one part of the country and another part of the country. You all see these roads that they show in Leh and Ladakh. Haven't you seen that in TV? You just see roads in Leh and Ladakh, Google and see some videos, you will understand. These were places where you never had any roads, and which is why the Chinese can come in whenever they want. You go anywhere, I have seen right up to the last point in Tamil Nadu, which is Dhanushkoti. You got fabulous roads. You go to any small town in any area, the roads are developing. When you have infrastructure, the village gets better integration with the urban society, with the broader society. And there's another point. The time taken to move people, goods, services gets shortened. So, the cost of logistics, you are all cost accountants, the cost of logistics as a component of economic productivity, or as a component of business, as a component of service, will go down continuously for 2-3 decades. Even today, logistic as a percentage of Indian GDP is low single digit. In America, it is high double digit. If you want to create logistics which will drive your society to the future, without that you are not going to go far. If you want logistic at that level, you need infrastructure, and we have been investing in good infrastructure for a good 25 years. But we could do it faster, but that's for another day. The last point is tax collection. It's widely believed that if you avoid taxes, you will become rich. There cannot be a greater myth than this. I am myself an example of somebody who believed what my chartered accountant told me when I was 21. He said, don't listen to all these old people. Pay whatever tax you need to pay. The rest is yours. You can do whatever you like with it. And you can grow it however you want. Such a simple statement. I tell him to this day that you said this when I was 21. It's a long time back. So this myth about taxation being something against you is something we have as a society. And we have been fighting this from 1993. There was a report called the Raja Chalaya report, which Manmohan Singh famously commissioned. I have read it as a student of management in 93. On everything, there is a tax, and then when you sell it the second time, there is another tax. So what? And then the third time, another tax. So if something changes 4 hands before it comes to you, it has suffered 4 times tax, which means that you have what is called as cascading taxation. Okay? Today, India has virtually no cascading taxation. It is to the credit of all our political parties that over a span of 30 years, we have completely erased cascading taxation. But it is the irony of sorts that in the last step of eradicating cascading taxation, which is the goods and services tax, we had the highest campaign against removal of cascading taxation in the society, which to my mind is completely dumb. Nobody who has common sense will oppose a tax which basically removes cascading taxation and which basically lowers the overall rate of taxation, right? The overall rate of taxation on almost every product was lowered, and yet we had a huge hue and cry. Why did we have this? Because there are sections of society who believe that their economic progress will not happen if they pay taxes. In fact, the backwardness of such sections of society comes mainly from that belief that they will be kept backward if they are paying taxes. Whereas if they pay taxes, they are financialized, they show history, they get credit, they get capital from banks, they get capital from other entities which actually accelerate their growth. Tax collection in our country has finally started showing growth. We are finally seeing the GST at a good number. We are finally seeing corporate taxation growing at a rate more than what the government projects. The last 2 years, post-COVID, we have seen the corporate taxation become higher. The government also did something which is seen very, very controversially. There are 2 views on that, which is to reduce the rate of corporate taxation to about 25%. Now, There is a political angle to it which I am not interested in, but let me just talk about the economic angle. The economic angle is, when you tax a company at the rate of 25%, you leave 75% in the hands of the company. It's very simple. And you leave that money in his hands to invest for the growth of his company. The government also did something very, very interesting when they reduced the corporate taxes, which is never spoken in the public domain. Those who oppose the reduction in corporate taxes unfailingly fail to mention that if the company pays that money to the shareholder has to again pay tax. Whereas if the company invests that money to create assets, then the company is all right. So the government basically left 8 to 10% more money in the hands of the company, so that the companies can invest and create assets for the future. Despite reducing the taxes, we are seeing corporate taxes grow at a rate faster than it grew before corporate taxes were higher. So these are the 5 things which I think are going to be game changers for the future: financial inclusion, financial digitization, urban consumption, infrastructure, and tax collection. All right, now this is something very, very interesting. This is very important because I think that most young people need to understand this, because if you don't understand and believe in some basic things, you're going to get left behind. It's very, very important for you to understand this. This is the JAM Trinity with this Jandan Aadhaar Mobile. Okay, this is basically giving everybody a bank account, giving them an Aadhaar number, and giving them a mobile connectivity. So this Trinity basically created credit history for people, credit rating, loan availability, and it gave them digital transaction mobility. It also helped the government transfer money, and you've seen the schemes. There is the gas subsidy called PEHEL, then you have the insurance, PMBSY, then you have the life insurance, then you have the pension. Pay money by a click to every citizen. How many of you have gone and collected 2,000 rupees in a ration card? How many of you have seen people queue outside ration cards? Right? Actually, it was unnecessary. Why do you think this was done? That this was available. This facility to pay the 2,000 rupees in a ration card was available. Why do you think people were made to queue? No. What is the reason? People have lost one day's income to collect 2,000 rupees. So if you got the same money in your bank account, 2,000 rupees if you got in your bank account, do you really think that you will not recollect who gave you this money? Tell me an honest answer. You are getting money from so many people in your UPI account, in your GPay. Don't you know who gave you the money? Your mother will give you 500 for your birthday, your aunt will give you, your grandparents will give you, your friend sends you some money. Do you really forget that? It's basically an assault on the rights of the citizen. It's basically to make the citizen feel subservient. This scheme, if it runs into everything that we do, gives the citizen respect, and he does not have to go and bend before somebody to collect what is his legitimate right. Equality is about how you are treating a person when you are giving him something. You have a right to, if it's your right, you have a right to claim it. Then everybody is not going to get it, right? So no, but there is a flip side. But why should I stop working for one day to collect something which is my right? It should reach me. It's as simple as that. So this basically has removed that. You don't, whether you voted for a party, you didn't vote for a party, you didn't go to the polling booth itself, right? This is your right. It has to come to you. You're not obligated to somebody to get this, right? That's the message. That's what this did. Basically, subtly removed all the other factors which were at play. And this is the next one. This is a very, very important. How many of you have heard of these magic 4 letters ONDC? I'm sure everybody in this room will know. If you say Ambani, Adani, you'll know. But no one knows about ONDC. That is the tragedy of our society. What is modernist is not spoken about. So, how many of you have done business with Amazon? How many of you have done business with Flipkart? How many of you have done business with Swiggy? Everybody. How many of you have done business with Zomato? Okay. How many of you sell your products through Swiggy? You have a restaurant or something. Anyone in this? Any families? No? Anyone selling your product? Your parents are doing business selling through Amazon or Flipkart. Anyone know? How many of you know what is the commission paid to Swiggy or Zomato? You are paying 100 rupees to buy food. How much is the commission paid to Swiggy or Zomato? How many of you know this? 4? No. It's between 20 and 25%. Okay? Now, Amazon, Flipkart, all these, or you may take Reliance or anyone, whatever name, any platform, also have very high intermediation rates. Now, if you are going to sit in Tirunelveli and make appalams, which are excellent, and you want to sell those appalams throughout the country, you have to pay 25% to a platform. Your margin may not be 25%, so you don't do that business. Correct? On the contrary, if you create a network where you can do trade and settlement without incurring that cost, don't you think so many people will start doing trade across this country? Today I am able to send 100 rupees. Why 100? 10 rupees I am able to send from here to somebody who is stuck in Kashmir. 1 rupee I can send, correct? Click, you can send the money in UPI. What UPI was to transaction, ONDC is to commerce. It's basically giving all Indians an equal right to become entrepreneurs, to become micro businessmen, small businessmen. It's allowing a housewife to actually make paintings and sell. It gives somebody who's making some small food to sell it. Somebody who makes a biryani can sell it. And you don't have to give 25% to Swiggy, right? Open Network Digital Commerce, again a platform which has been developed under the leadership of Nandan Nilekani. And this is the next big idea. I am sure that you will get enough to read about this, but all young people must read about this because it tells you about what is the opportunity in store for you. Even if you don't become an entrepreneur or businessman, it's important that you know something like this and how it works. So ONDC will change trade, commerce and business in our country. It will formalize everybody. It will also give the government tax revenues. So you save money which you otherwise give to somebody who is taking a rent on you to help you do business, and you also pay a little bit of taxes to government for creating more such initiatives. Now this is a very, very interesting chart. I'm sure you must have seen something related. Just see the graph of how people are doing digital. Today digital is 35% of transaction, right? It was barely 10% before COVID, 10-12%. It's tripled. And look at that, the daily fast track collections in our highways, which we have set up, is increasing every day. It's now 1.4 billion every day, which means that more money will be available at the hand of government to build more roads, which was not available before because the money was not reaching the government. Where it went is anybody's guess. Maybe ants ate it on the way. But now that you have this system of digitization, you cannot hide the money. The money is there. It is seen and it is accounted for. So from 0 a decade ago and 10% FY18, digital is now more than 30%. The value of cash transaction is actually higher today. I'm not saying that cash has gone out of the system, which means that the potential for more people to move to digital is only increasing as the economy grows, as time progresses, which means that more people will get financialized, more people will get the benefits of financialization. Now, I'm going to show you 5-6 data points. One is the hiring in the formal sector. It's now at an all-time high. Jobs are available in the formal sector. The second is the salary hike. How many of you have people in the IT sector? Their incomes have gone up like crazy in the last 1 year, especially in middle management. Then personal income tax is growing at a rate like never before. Then the banks are having enough money. The CASA rates have jumped. And banks are sitting on excess funds today. And the non-food credit growth rose 12.6%, while the deposit rate went 8.3%, which means that more people are becoming entrepreneurial. They're borrowing money. They are investing in their lives, maybe buying a two-wheeler, maybe building a house, maybe starting a small venture, maybe taking a mudra loan and trying something entrepreneurial, maybe running an MSME, so many things. So credit growth has finally started, and if you look at the credit growth for several years, especially during COVID, it was 5-6%. Now it's doubling. If credit growth happens, that means that the economy is again going back towards a better growth trajectory. So these are some of the factors which show that urban consumption is going to pick up. If people are borrowing money, if they're paying more taxes, which means they're earning more money, the salaries are growing, more jobs are being created, more money is sitting in the bank, it means that people will be able to spend more. That is the fairly straightforward conclusion we could have. I mentioned infrastructure. Last year was the highest, the year before the highest per day road laying. Last year has been again down. Now the government is trying to again take it back to above 30 kilometers per day. But still, if you see the other graph on the right, it shows the Gram Sadak Yojana. You see how much of rural road construction happened between 2004 and now. You're seeing that graph, it's soaring graph. Similarly, this is the highway construction. So all this is going to create more economic activity, more GDP, and naturally incremental prosperity, which means that prosperity is going to be created. The only question is how can we make everybody participate in that prosperity, and that's a challenge which both government and society will have to counter. We have to fight that challenge. I mentioned the direct tax collections. They are higher today than what the government is projecting, and the highest taxes in the history are happening in direct taxes. Direct tax means income tax, many of you will know. And these are some of the numbers, and this is after paying refunds. Earlier, if the year ends in March and you pay your taxes by June or July, you will not get your refund for the next 1 year. Now, refunds are being paid before the September advance tax. So what the government owes society is going back, and the government is still collecting more money, which is something which I could not have predicted a few years ago. That's happening. But corporate tax is very good, it's growing, and the number of people filing taxes is also increasing. And if the trend continues, then the direct tax collection for this year, FY23, could exceed the budget target of 14.2 lakh crores. We could well see a 10 or 15% higher tax collection this year, which is unprecedented. Which means that economic activity in the formal sector in the country is very good, which also means that the economic activity must spread from the formal sector to the informal sector, and that challenge is something that we are still fighting. This is the GST collection, again 1.4 lakh per month for the last 6 months continuously. But in my opinion, this should have happened 1 year ago, but COVID spoiled everything. So we had 2 lost years. So we should beat 1.5 lakh crore every month of GST collection. Because only if that number goes up, the states will get more money and the states will be able to do what they want to do. At the moment, the states are still struggling because they are not able to really do much on the economic front. The last point is inflation. I think that inflation is the tax on the poor. When prices go up, poor people suffer. Those who don't have income or those who have modest income are the victims. So inflation is a direct tax on the poor. A society's primary responsibility is to control inflation. If I ask you which is the society which has actually controlled inflation best in the last 40 years before 2023, can you name this country? USA, sir. It's USA. America has barely had any inflation for 3-4 decades, but 4 decades ago it had horrible inflation, and it had to go through a decade of difficulty. But what it did during that decade gave it 4 decades of prosperity. Now cut to our present problem. We are having inflation now. Inflation is our single biggest threat. If we manage to control inflation decisively, if we produce enough for our society, if we manage to keep our prices in check, if we ensure that goods are not hoarded, services are freely available, then we would get a model of economic development which will deliver growth for a long, long time to come. If we fail, then what would happen is that more people will again slip back into poverty. That's the first thing that will happen. The second thing that will happen is that government will not give enough capital to enterprise, because you will shrink the loan size of banks. You will take money away from the banks and keep it in the reserve bank with no productive activity, because you want to control inflation. When you remove money from the system, the prices of everything will come down. People will lose spending power. All those things I said about urban consumption will turn on its head. It will turn upside down. So controlling inflation is a primary challenge of government. So far we have done decently, but the last word on inflation is not yet out. So the West is now very pessimistic because they don't know how to control. How many of you know what the West did to control COVID? The economic impact of COVID. What did the West do? What did America do? It printed money. And what did it do? It put money in the hands of people. And what did those people do? They went and speculated in the stock market and they enjoyed life. Right? So what happened? They created inflation. When they created inflation, what happened? They had a wealth effect, which was artificial. And now everything has collapsed. What did India do? It only gave enterprises money, it gave people food, it gave people gas cylinders, it ensured that livelihoods were not affected. It did not put too much money in the hands of people. That, in my opinion, could potentially save us from the kind of inflation which the West is saving. If we had done that, we'd be gone. But a lot of people are saying that why can't you put 10,000 in the bank account of every family, right? What you'd have had is inflation. Putting 10,000 and then asking you to pay 500 rupees for a chicken and 20 rupees for an egg is not how governance should be done. Countries like Singapore, Sri Lanka, all failed on this score. Whereas India's inflation management was better because of our response to COVID. America is facing all these problems in inflation because of how Donald Trump went in combating COVID, and he also lost his post incidentally.
But sorry, they feel that the crude prices doesn't play a role in inflation.
Sorry?
Crude price.
Crude price certainly pays. Okay, crude. If you understand why a war is timed like this, why do you think Putin chose to attack Ukraine at this time? Why did he time it like that?
Winters are closer. They are like
Part one.
more desperate
You are right.
more desperate need of energy. The Western European countries.
You are right. That is to create inflation. He wants to create inflation. As simple as that. This war has basically also exported. Putin has basically exported inflation into the West by creating a shortage in oil. Simple. Very simple. Export of oil, of inflation. You're not getting what I said.
No, that is one part. That's a true story. But on the other hand, you are mentioning about that was the inflation was driven by the COVID handouts.
100%. The secondary inflation is what is happening today. But the primary because of them only prices went up. Because the wealth effect was massive. How many people went and speculated in stock market? You just see the data of Robinhood in US. You will see how many people have done all sorts of things. Cryptocurrency, again created by government money. All right. This is what the finance minister says. She says that the private sector has to invest. This has been a problem. Let's acknowledge it. In India, the private sector confidence in investing is so low. It's just those few industrialists who are taking courageous decisions. Whereas every industrialist should take decision to expand and grow or make his business better or efficient. You're all cost managements. If your business becomes more cost efficient, what do you think will happen? What do you think will happen if a business becomes more efficient? It will become more competitive. What will happen if it becomes more competitive? It will get more customers. What will happen if it gets more customers? Its capacities will get filled. And then what would happen? You need to set up new capacity, which means you need to do capital expenditure. So you people have a very big role to play in creating capital expenditure in society. You are such important people in that.
Sorry, again another point in this. If you look at it, does the stock market plays a spoil sport in this? In the sense, if you look at the 80s and 90s, the money to investors investing today went to new
Companies are also raising money.
Like a spoil sport, today's stock market is not like a spoil sport in not improving the economy.
You are partly right, but also you have to understand that the money for early stage businesses is being given by private equity. In the 80s and 90s, you didn't have private equity. So somebody else is taking the risk of incubating a business and bringing it to some size.
But so again, there are development financial institutions there. ICICI, AFC, etc.
Now ICICI has become a bank. It's no more a DFI. IDBI is no more a DFI. There are no DFIs in India except there's one. India Infrastructure Finance Corporation of India, IIFCI. That's the only one which is there, and it's mostly lending to government. So the model has changed. The times have changed. Risk taking has changed. Capital is available for people who want, and I'm sure that more companies will access the capital market. I'm pretty sure it will happen.
But that is not happening. We're not seeing the FM finance minister has openly admitted if the amount that is going via mutual funds, etc., to the stock market.
So let me explain. Let me explain what people are doing. Let's look at Reliance. Since you're asking this, it's a good question. So I think that's better than going to the slide. Let's look at what Reliance did or Adani did. Okay, what did Reliance do? Reliance borrowed money and set up a massive telecom infrastructure and retail infrastructure. They borrowed money. They got money at cheap rates. So they decided to borrow money. Then COVID strikes. What does Reliance do? It raises nearly 1,50,000 crores. No. First it raises money from Google, it raises money from Facebook, and it repays all the borrowers, all the lenders, it repays all the loans. And then what does Reliance do next? Reliance says we are getting into solar, we are getting into hydrogen, we are going to create the future of Indian energy, which is 250 gigawatt of solar is going to be built in the next decade, right? Now again, whether Reliance is going to raise equity or debt, I don't know. If they raise equity, it's what Dhirubhai would have done in those days. But Mukesh first takes debt, then builds the asset, and then raises equity. And he raised the equity from 3-4 people. It's a large sum of money. So this is the model. You take Gautam Adani, same thing. If he raises, let's say 10 billion or 15 billion, which is 1,20,000 crores, then his debt will go down by half. So he's taken borrowed money, built assets, and then he raises equity. And today, what is the source of capital for all these people? It's people who want to be present in India. In the case of Reliance, it was the new age tech companies, which is Google, Facebook, these guys. In the case of Adani, it's the sovereign wealth of countries like Qatar, Abu Dhabi. These are the guys. So they want to come and invest in Indian infrastructure and be a part of our. Singapore is also potentially there. Abu Dhabi is a very big player. The sovereign wealth, the country has earned and kept money which it earlier was investing in America. Now they don't want to invest in America because America is coming to spoil their oil price because America is an exporter. Earlier America was a customer. The approach of the Arab world, the entire Arab world, is to invest, whether you're Qatar, Kuwait, any country, invest in a country which will be your customer, your friend, which gives you business. Which is why today Indian infrastructure's biggest checks are being written by the sovereign wealth entities of the Arab world. And they are giving the equity. Now, you can ask me, why are they not coming and taking it from you and me? When somebody is writing a check for 20,000 crores, why should he come to us?
So the benefit goes to them, isn't it? The sovereign wealth gets the.
No, they also give a rights issue. I think, see, the opportunity to invest is so huge in our country that I think that it doesn't really matter.
The other day we mentioned about Gautam Adani. He actually pledged his shares to take this 15 billion.
Naturally, so he has to now raise the equity, right? He has to raise the equity in some other place. See, this is one thing you have to understand, that no Indian institution will give money just like that. It won't give. You have to fulfill a lot of contractual obligations because if it goes, then they are accountable to shareholders. It's not so simple. Vijay Mallya, who actually failed in a business and who was ill advised to go away from India, has lost everything he had in India. He has probably something is left outside. But government has collected 23,000 crores and you know if I have taken a loan and my business fails, you will at least waive my interest, no? You will take your principal back as a bank. In the case of Vijay Mallya, they recovered everything. So, entrepreneurs take risk in a certain way, they create assets, then either they have to create equity and reduce their debt, or they have to earn money and repay their debt fast enough, which is not so easy, because the gestation of infrastructure projects is 20-30 years. So, you have to raise equity, and you have to raise equity fast. If Mukesh Ambani tried to raise this money from you and me, he would have failed. It's as simple as that. So, you take the best available option, and I am telling you, the money coming from a sovereign of one country to a private entity in another country is a government level investment. It's not between two individuals. It's a country deciding to partner with another country and putting money in the institutions built in that country.
Actually, a word of caution in that is, if you look at the sovereign wealth fund of the oil exporting countries, they want to move from oil to non-oil economy.
That's why they're giving us all the money.
So they are
Not only oil to non-oil, they want their customer to be their friend, not somebody a competitor. And they want that country to be fair in how it deals with the wealth of that sovereign. Okay, I'll ask you a question. China is also buying oil. Why are the Middle East sovereigns not going and investing in China? Have you ever thought about this? China is as big a buyer of oil as India. Why are they coming and investing in India? Have you thought about that? That's it. We are a transparent society. That's it.
I have a question here.
Please.
Why should I invest to repay debt of a company? No, I'm taking equity to repay the debt. Does it make sense?
Because I am not taking the gestation, I is you. Okay, I am investing to repay debt because the risk of gestation product implementation has been taken by a lender. No, the lender, the bank. Bank has taken that, betting on the acumen of the entrepreneur. It could be a Tata as well. Now, I am a sovereign. I don't know how to put up a project, but I want to participate in that country. When the project starts earning money, I put equity. I don't care where the money goes. If it's going to lower the debt, I am in a better position. My money is safer. You agree? You don't agree?
The market is there. They come into India, they see the market.
As simple as that. That's it. So,
The other way, gentlemen, there are other countries like you take an example of Ola. It was sitting at a huge cash money. Bhavesh Agarwal don't know what to do. Now from getting into car and platform of car services, he got into EV services, and he has to prepone his launch without the product itself getting ready. He has to launch it, and it is a great example. When you have lot of money and don't know what to do, you get into something wrong.
absolutely right. See, understand one thing.
Contradictory of what these guys who are buying debt, taking debt, building an infrastructure, building a company, then selling it off. The other way, if people in foreign funds or whatever, they have lot of money, they get into nasty decisions and get into.
You are absolutely right. Capital is like a knife without any handle. The person holding it should handle it with so much care. You can't say that somebody has given me money, I'll do whatever with it. Just before you came, I was in a discussion about funding a private company. It's going to be in the furniture business. My understanding is that company doesn't need money at all to grow the business. I mean, there are what you call as negative working capital business. How many of you are familiar with that? Okay. Yeah. For example, you get milk in your house in a packet. So, the milk is sold to you within 24 hours. You are paid, right? But the money is paid to me, the farmer, after 15 days. So, the company can do business without capital. Only for assets it requires money. So, similarly, this was a company, but the founder says, I want 50 crore to grow. My point of view is, if you give that fellow 50 crore, which he doesn't need, he is going to squander it. What you say is absolutely right. Whereas these guys are taking debt and they are being accountable to set up airports, ports, big telecom infrastructure, giving a phone to everybody with an Aadhaar click, okay, and bringing you the cheapest mobile phone in the world or whatever. I mean, we can debate on the merit of what they do, yeah, but the idea at the headline level, okay, I'm no fan of either, but you have to understand what people are doing, right? So that's nation building. I would strongly advise all of you to go and read how uh, how Americans participated towards the end of Second World War and what happened. You should read how Ford produces military equipment to help the West fight Hitler. Right? In a crisis, nations get built. And subsequently you see the rise of America in the subsequent this thing. So today if you see India is today closer to so many countries, mainly the oil producing country. We are a friend of, they can fight amongst themselves, but we are a friend of all the oil producing countries. Right? Because of the collective integrity of this country. It's all of us. Right? They are willing to give you capital. They want to be a part, they want to buy your roads, they want to buy your ports, they want to be with you. Contrast this with what China did with ports in Pakistan and Sri Lanka. Contrast this with the BRI, the Belt Road Initiative of China, where it just goes in, makes a country indebted and tells the country this land doesn't belong to you. So, now this country is not about 2-3 businessmen, certainly not. And what she says is correct. Every small entrepreneur has to have the courage to invest. He has to grow. He must be, micro must become small, small must become medium, medium must become big. There must be hope. Then what happens is, it is these people who are going to give the employment and growth to others and hope to others. So unless you are going to grow people at the bottom, you are not going to build the country you want, where more people become prosperous within 30-40 years. We don't have too much time at our disposal. We can't waste it in politics. 30-40 years, the prosperity of this country has to go much higher than it is today. And it is the job of everyone, whether you are a politician, whether you are a bureaucrat, whether you are a commoner, whether you are a businessman, whether you are a professional, all of us have to do that. And she says that you must invest, because people are not investing because they don't have the confidence. So RBI says the capex of corporate sector will be important. We need people to spend confidently. And they are taking an assessment. Improved private sector corporate outlook, rising capacity utilization, robust demand sentiment, higher capital spending and policy initiatives by government. They believe that capex will come back. But I must tell you, you know, in Tamil we say Puli Varadu, there's a story. Like that, this capex has been there, bogey, for last 10 years it's not happened. But high time it happens.
Sir, a while back you mentioned about the reduction in corporate tax, which translates to reinvestment.
They put money.
That is in contrast to RBI statement, isn't it?
What is RBI saying? Which is, where is the contrast?
Instead, the overall base is that the capex is not coming in, but on the other hand, the government reduces the corporate tax rate.
So the government reduced it just before COVID. 6 months, October, 19th August, something like that, tax reduction happened, August, September. 20 March, you had COVID. So 2 years, companies didn't have the confidence. Now they are making profits. Now the capacity utilization going more towards full. Now they have to do it. If we didn't have COVID, then your capex should have happened 1 year, 2 years earlier. No, 2019. Mrs. Sitaraman, as finance minister, reduced it in 2019. I know that. I'm not much a fan of reduction in corporate taxes, but governments have their decisions. We can't agree with all decisions, and you're not expected to, right? So, but that's the idea. I understand why it is being done. It doesn't mean that I am completely with the decision, but I have to have a moral obligation to tell you why it is done. I can't put my bias into that place. Thank you very much for your patient hearing.
Thank you, Shyam, for a very wonderful presentation. I think you have spent a lot of time. Last 1 week back when we told him we have this presentation, he said, I'll start preparing. I'm a big fan of it. I've seen in different forums where he has spoken, but I never have got an opportunity to go very in-depth like that, what he has done today. I was wondering what he has been speaking on these subjects almost throughout. You can see in the YouTube channel, everything. He has been talking on all these issues. But today he has made a special presentation work he has taken from last 1 week. He said, I'm doing, and he has really done a good job. Thank you, sir.